Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's Friday night on TalkTV. I'm Mike Graham and this is the one place where we will be as judgmental as we want to be, and all you have to do is sit back and relax and possibly agree with us. You never know. There's been an awful lot of plankery and we're going to cover all of it right here in the next hour. I'm delighted to say we've got a very intelligent panel with us today. Dr. Renee Hoenderkamp, who's not just a commentator but she's a GP as well, in case you need any medical assistance. Kevin O'Sullivan's here. He is, of course, on every show now on TalkTV, so by contract he's got to be on this one as well. Amanda Devlin, here from the Sun Showbiz Department. Plenty of showbiz planks going on. And Russell Quirk, a man who normally comes up with tales of being arrested, but so far this week, so good.
It's only Friday.
Well done. Stay out of trouble. This is the plank that we'll be fighting for, of course. I will be making a judgment towards the end of the show, but I don't know where we begin, really, but let's begin at the beginning, shall we? Dr. Renee, who is your first plank?
Shall we? So I was already outraged on Monday by the Metropolitan Police,
yes.
and it has just escalated as the week has gone on.
Right.
So on Monday, I was outraged because I'd watched them not police the marches across
right.
London, people praying in front of the cenotaph,
right.
just chaos. Then I watched them actually arrest some Just Stop Oil presenters, which I know we're going to talk about, I think, later. But then we got later in the week and we've seen our police in London and actually in Manchester tearing down the posters of the missing or kidnapped children in Israel.
Yeah.
Now, the Manchester Police have had the grace to apologise.
Yes.
And they've given some really nefarious reason, but hey, they've tried, they've apologised.
Well, at least they've said they got it wrong, haven't they?
Yeah, they got it wrong. But the Met Police, oh no. The Met Police have dug down, and basically this says to me that our police have chosen a political side.
Yes.
But I don't think they've necessarily even done it for political reasons. I think they've decided that they need to keep the bigger group happy, even if that means making the smaller group sabotage.
Also, we saw,
unhappy.
didn't we, last week, Kevin, we spoke about this before, this ludicrous sort of thing about, well, jihad doesn't necessarily mean holy war, even when they're chanting it at the top of their voices and calling on the Muslim armies to unite and fight.
It's literally in the Hezbollah constitution, jihad and obliterate the Jews. They're in the same sentence.
Yeah. It's extraordinary the way the police have been behaving. I can't understand why they don't actually realise that what they're doing is not just causing division, but it's failing to discourage the people that would do this from doing it. So now people will say, well, of course we can take these posters down because the police did.
Yeah, well, I think, as you know, Mike, for random reasons, I've been caught up in both of the big pro-Palestine marches in central London last 2 Saturdays, and they're all chanting jihad. They're all wearing jackets with "from the river to the sea" on the back, which also means annihilate all Jews. And clearly, the police, I've seen it myself, there's not that many coppers there, and they're daunted by the numbers, 70, 100, 150,000. Not to put too fine a point on it, they're a bit frightened. So there's 100,000 people marching through London last Saturday, and they made 7 arrests, which tells its own story. But I don't think that's the main reason that they're ripping down these posters or not arresting people at these marches. This is the reason, is because the police always support the fashionable left-wing cause. That's what they do. And the fashionable left-wing cause in this dispute is pro-Palestine.
The police... They didn't used to, though.
I know they didn't.
I don't remember the police when I was growing up supporting any
but they've become
Mike,
lefty.
it's a consequence of the wokeism that we've all been criticising for months and years. This is what happens when you get to the extremities of wokeism. And in contrast, over the last 2 or 3 days this week, we've seen that chap that was walking along Bethnal Green Road and made some comments on video about the amount of Palestinian flags that were adorning that street.
That was a Scottish guy, wasn't it?
Yes. Lives in Bethnal Green, went home, posted it on Facebook. 2 hours later, 4 police officers turn up and arrest him, drag him out of his house. So, I mean, whatever happened to freedom of speech, freedom of expression? It seems to me that we now have a 2-tier police service whereby if you're potentially, if you're particularly an ethnic minority, you get let off. If you're an easy target, you don't.
Right. Well, let's have a look at some of the policing that did happen last weekend. And we'll see more of it this weekend, as I say. They've called for another big demonstration in Trafalgar Square on Saturday. But this is what happened last weekend when the police were trying to talk somebody down off a statue.
Yo!
Don't light any more of them, all right?
So scary.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
I mean,
talk about a good telling off.
Don't light any more of this. The guy's wearing a mask, right? He's got a flare, Now, the police actually, bizarrely, replied to a tweet that I put out on this because I said, this is no longer a peaceful protest in London. This is not what I call proper policing. You know, people are frightened to go into central London. The place is being held to ransom by these maniacs who are marching up and down. And they actually responded by saying, it's very tricky, this situation, because the rules that cover flares date all the way back to 1870. And it's only if you throw flares at people that it's an offence. Yeah. And it's not an offence to climb on a statue unless you're injuring or causing harm or damage to the statue.
They're interpreting the rules to suit themselves.
What do you reckon my chances of going to the march of the weekend and going around the perimeters with a flare in my hand? What do you reckon my chances
and
of
an
being...
Israeli flag.
And an Israeli flag.
Screwed.
Or an English flag, even worse, an English flag.
Faster you can say jihad.
Exactly.
Yeah, these couples are pro-Palestine. It's as simple as that, and they're anti-Israel.
I was just going to say, speaking more generally about Met Police, what have they been able to do right for a long time now?
They haven't got much right,
and the statement they put out after all of this kicked off and them trying to defend the posters being torn down, that was a disaster. Yeah. Everything about them, they can't make the right decisions. They can't then defend their decisions and back them up. Right. They're just a complete disaster.
No.
I mean, these posters are showing empathy for poor little kidnapped children, poor little kidnapped grandparents, all kept down in these horrible dungeons underneath Gaza. And to pull those posters down is a direct political statement. It is we hate Israel and we love Palestine. And so also, why the hell are the police doing it?
Sadiq
Sadiq Khan's been very quiet, hasn't he, about all of it? But the funny thing is that as well, the people who are pulling those posters down before the police started doing it, quite often will say things like, this is all made up, nobody's taken them hostage, this isn't true, this is Israeli propaganda, and they didn't behead any children. I mean, it's unbelievable what's going on.
But the police statement clearly said that from the police's point of view, they were worried, inverted commas, that the posters would incite further unrest. However, apparently 100,000 people protesting, and a large element of those people protesting and shouting from the river to the sea.
That's fine.
And shouting that for jihad and that they want Jews to be destroyed as people and as a nation. That's okay. That's not inciting.
No, of course not. No, that'd be ridiculous. Right, let's move on. Keir Starmer for you, Kevin.
Keir Starmer.
It's a similar kind of idea.
It certainly is. The reason I've chosen Keir Starmer, there's so many reasons.
Sir Keir Starmer.
Sir Keir, any given week to be plank of the week. He's plank of the century, if you ask me. However, on this instance, the reason I've cited the Labour leader is because of his ludicrous stance on the ceasefire in Gaza. Amid these virtue signalling calls for a ceasefire, which isn't going to happen, by the way, it's ridiculous. Keir Starmer refuses. To be fair, he came straight out at the beginning with Rishi Sunak just after October the 7th and said, I stand by Israel's right
which was
to
the right
defend
thing to do.
Which was the right thing to do. He still says, this was a speech he made this week at Chatham House. He still says, I stand by Israel's right to defend itself, but I'm not joining the calls for a ceasefire. But what I do want is a humanitarian pause. What's the difference between a ceasefire and a humanitarian pause? And there comes a time, I know politics is a ludicrous game, it's ridiculous, most of the people in it are ridiculous, but there comes a time when you've got to be a grown-up. Don't play silly little linguistic games when people are dying. If you don't want to call for a ceasefire, great. Don't then undermine that position by saying, but I am calling for a humanitarian pause. A humanitarian pause is a ceasefire. So a little bit of clarity, please,
But
Sakir.
he's got a big problem, hasn't he, Kev? Because basically he has not eradicated anti-Semitism from the Labour Party. He's put a plaster over the top. And what this has done is it's peeled off the edges of the plaster and they're all coming out of the wound. And that's his big problem. And he's now thinking to himself, my God.
I know. Well, you can see how big his problem is because when he came out of that speech, after making it, outside of Chatham House, there was an awful lot of very angry demonstrators calling him a war criminal. Have a look at this.
Away from the car, thank you.
Once again, the police doing a great job there of keeping the baying mob away from the possible new Prime Minister of this country. I mean, unbelievable scenes, because he's got this problem in the left, as you say, Renee, where members of his front bench are already saying that he should be calling for a ceasefire. You've got Sadiq Khan, who might get mentioned later. We've got Andy Burnham. We've got Anas Sarwar, the leader of Scottish Labour. We've got Hamza Yousaf. You've got hundreds of councillors up and down Britain who call themselves Labour councillors who are claiming that they want him to change his view. Yeah. But he's not doing it, so you've got to give him a bit of credit.
Yeah,
on this occasion, I'm going to stand up for
because he's not doing
it, because he is calling for a ceasefire.
He's not.
What's a humanitarian pause?
I've no idea.
It means you stop firing your weapons.
Hang on. It's even worse than that. What he's actually doing, he's trying to appease both sides.
Exactly.
By trying to compromise, he's upsetting everyone. He's upsetting everyone.
No, we must move away from this, otherwise they may cause division on the Plank of the Week show. Which never have to call the police in. But I mean, no, I think on this occasion you got it wrong, because I think the point about Starmer is that he could have gone that route. He could have gone down the route of saying, let's have a ceasefire and help.
Except he gave it a different name. That's great.
Made all of his lefty acolytes happy, but he didn't do that. So I'm going to say
he could have changed the name of a ceasefire to Ballsy Wolsey.
Well, he could have.
I'm not calling for a ceasefire. I'm calling for a Ballsy Wolsey.
I think
it's ludicrous. It's ludicrous.
Right.
Don't let him off. You've changed. What's the matter with you?
I have. Since I saw you on an earlier show yesterday, obviously I've changed my mind about a lot of things. Amanda, what's your first one?
I'm scared to wind Kevin up. So
Don't do
let's see what happens. What he thinks about this.
That's what I'm here for.
So Janet Street Porter. You know Janet Street Porter?
Yes, we do.
She's on Loose Women. She's been around for a long time. Yeah. She's caused offence to all Friends fans.
Oh, really?
By tweeting.
And dentists everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, I can do my Janet. This is where I do my Janet Street Porter impersonation. When I used to run the Independent, I was very good at it, but the paper didn't sell very many copies. Never mind.
That's perfect. Actually, she could be in the room.
Janet?
She could. It's scary.
It's terrifying.
So, what has she said about Friends then?
So she's never watched it.
Right.
And she tweeted after the death of Matthew Perry that she has managed to live a fulfilled life.
Sweet.
Yes, so am I the only person who has managed to live a fulfilling life without watching Friends?
So I am one of those people, but I may
not
not have
I knew they were among us.
That's a bit mealy mouse, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, why would you put that out
Exactly.
there?
I think the fact that it was
I'm with Janet.
What's the point? It's fine if you don't want it, but I think these kind of people, I'm sorry, I'm going to put you two in this, they are like vegans who just go on about being vegan.
Yeah, but we didn't tweet it. I didn't tweet it.
But you're talking about it on a TV show.
So. You can't blame us.
Yeah, but the thing is,
you raised it.
Sorry, I knew I was going to wind you up. I knew I was going to wind him up.
I mean, I think the point is about 1 million people viewed this tweet because they were all pretty
everyone was because
it's all about
been
timing,
a huge moment for us as Friends fans, and it's been devastating. I just don't think if I wasn't into something, I just don't think I would get involved in tweeting. I just think it was a really kind of unnecessary comment to say someone's died at the end of the day at age 54 who has died.
Also, if you're going to be a bit sensitive about somebody's death, and it's always a sad death if somebody's died when they shouldn't have died. He was only 54.
Of course.
I mean, you can make fun of Friends whatever you want, and you can make fun of the fact that these American shows don't always translate as well as they ought to in Britain. And you can even make fun of people who love Friends, but you wouldn't do it the day that he died, surely.
No, but what Janet Street Porter's done, of course, because she's a bit of an irrelevant celebrity now, she's
Yes.
tried to make this about her, which is what celebrities do all the time.
Right.
When someone dies or something happens, it's,
so
I met them once, or when I
Yeah.
saw them in such and such, they make it about
I think it would have been better. I'll tell you what I would have tweeted. I think I will now. Am I the only person? the only person in the world who doesn't think Friends is very funny?
Well, why don't you do it about loose women as well while you're at it?
Well, that is funny, but not in a good way.
Laughing at it.
Never watched the entire episode of Loose Women. I've just still managed to have a fulfilling life. The other thing I don't like about Janet Street Porter is she's a rambler. And anybody who rambles, as far as I'm concerned, walks around other people's private property demanding that they've got the right of way.
Aimlessly.
I just go, what's wrong with you?
But with no purpose.
You're talking about trespassing. That's not the same as rambling.
I mean, there's nothing worse than people, in my view, who want to do things in a group. They all want to work together. They all want to walk together.
Do you have to ramble in a group?
I think you do. I don't think you can ramble, because the whole point of it is that you can
like the
tell each other.
president of the Rambling Association.
There is a Rambling Association.
She's the
and
president.
they're forever turning up at certain points to walk through property to prove that they can.
Well, why don't you
go? Why don't you just go out for a drink or something?
Why do they call it rambling? It's just walking.
Exactly.
So why
don't
don't
you
you
give it a name?
That am I the only person in the world who's lived a fulfilled life without rambling?
Without rambling. Although I do ramble for a living. I mean,
Aimless
there's a flaw in your argument there.
Friends is such a massively overrated show.
Friends, I mean, I think it's one of those shows that you don't have to love it, but it's very well put together.
It's an
very well
iconic
done.
show of its time, and I was really upset about it just because because he's someone that you've grown up with watching. So him dying was
It's a sad.
You wouldn't tweet about it 24 hours afterwards, would you?
Yeah.
In terms of your disdain for the show.
You wouldn't bother.
Freedom of speech. Freedom of speech.
There's no point in you appealing to Kevin's sensible or compassionate side. He doesn't have one. So, listen, Russell, let's go with yours.
He's on his 5th coffee this afternoon.
Yeah, I know.
25th.
An old favourite, Sadiq Khan.
Sadiq Khan. I don't think he's been on it for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, what's happened?
Amazing.
And I know, a bit like Keir Starmer, he could be on it for a whole bunch of reasons, I suppose. But this is the news, predictable as it is, that in the first month of the ULEZ expansion, Sadiq Khan has taken £26 million of our money, us as London drivers, into his coffers. So when we all said originally that this was never going to be about air quality, it wasn't about people suffering as a consequence of air quality on the streets of London, it was all about money. It's clearly totally 100% correct.
How many lives have been saved?
Well, I mean, none, because no one's died, apart from one person. Only ever one person has ever died whereby they've had air quality noted.
But that's not proved, by the way.
Well,
it was not proved.
One. Anyway, the point being, if Sadiq Khan was definitely concerned about the effects of bad air quality in London on the people of London, wouldn't he donate all that money to, let's say, asthma charities or do something proper with it? But he doesn't.
But
what
where
he does,
does all that money
he
go?
sticks it in the Do you know where it's going, Mike? For free school meals. He can electioneer over the next few months to everybody and say, look at me, I have paid for free school meals for the whole of London. It's not his money, it's our money.
Yeah, but more to the point, it's to bail TfL out. I mean, this is about...
But that's a lot of bailing out.
Well, this is about a financially illiterate administration, a financially illiterate mayor who drove London to the brink of bankruptcy. He needed money desperately. Hence the ULEZ expansion.
And TfL has been bankrupt twice.
It's going into TfL.
But surely even they can't spend 715,000 quid a day. No. I mean, the other thing that I find is reprehensible is that he always said it's a very small number of people who are affected by this. You know, most car drivers are actually going to be exempt. Well, not just that, but 57,000 drivers a day are having to buy the ULEZ pass, £12.50. And that means an awful lot of people are actually affected.
Yeah, and Kev talked about the irony of TfL having to be bailed out. Where's the worst quality of air in London?
Tubes.
On the tube.
Yeah.
On the underground. He doesn't do anything about that, does he?
So glad I only spend about an hour and a half a day on the tubes.
This is obviously what's making you so angry.
I know, that's what it is.
You're suffering from lack
poor
of oxygen.
air quality.
Poor air quality.
Well, if you just pay the ULEZ instead, you'll be OK.
Yeah, exactly. I'll have to move to Bromley, won't I?
Sadiq just puts posters up in the tube that say, be kind, encouraging people to be nice to each other instead of actually solving all of the...
Don't eat sugar, you can't have cake.
Right. At least don't eat it on the underground because obviously that would be an infection of some kind.
See, this is the same week, by the way.
This is the same week, by the way, that up in Glasgow, they have actually outlawed the case against the council because there was a load of business people taking the council to court saying, you've got no right to do this, you haven't listened to any of the actual residents or the businesses. There's one particular business that's going out of business, car repair company, because it's just 200 yards inside the ULEZ zone. And in Glasgow, you don't get to pay £12.50 to drive in it. You just get fined
if you're not
compliant.
Yeah.
60
quid, isn't it?
It's unbelievable.
What if you carried your car instead of driving it?
You could do that. But by the way,
push it.
By the way, 26 million quid in levy from ULEZ extension, and that's with about 500 or 600 cameras not working. Because not that we condone this, of course, we don't. But many of those cameras have been taken out of action.
They have, and we've got some tips for you as well, because I know you're a man that likes a car. If you want to get away with driving in London without having to pay, have a look at this. I don't know, put the music on this. It sounds very military. You can drive a tank through central London, and apparently it is compliant with the ULEZ restrictions. So it's clearly nothing to do with pollution, is it?
I happen to own a couple of cars that, let's just say, are old and therefore they don't qualify.
But beautiful.
But they are also massive gas guzzlers, which I'm proud of, by the way.
Isn't there a loophole that older cars, like classic cars, are
OK? 40, 40 years old and above, you don't pay.
Right.
Do you want to know what my Ford Mustang that I owned in Los Angeles, how many miles to the gallon it did? 8.
It's great, isn't it?
That's great. Brilliant. Excellent. You haven't got any more, though, have you?
I wish I did.
He wishes he did. Now, coming up, we're going to be talking about the weather because, of course, the storms are upon us again. And you know what that means. It's climate change, ladies and gentlemen. It's all coming up on Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. It is Friday night. It's the one place where you can be not worried about being judgmental because we do all that for you. So far, we've had some very good starting four contenders, and I'm going to go with my first one now because here we are. It is October. Actually, no, it's not. It's November, isn't it? We've moved into November. This is the season when, you know, it rains a lot. It gets dark. The clocks just went back. You know, you're trudging around with wet feet, wet clothes, and it's all terrible. But of course, it happens every year. We're now being told that the storms, because they've now got names, are much worse than they were before they had names. I'm not quite sure why that would be. But the biggest problem I've noticed over the past week and a half or so is that there's a lot more flooding going on. Yeah. And of course, the climate maniacs will say, well, there's a lot of flooding now because of the climate change. You know, there's a lot more rain falling. Well, there isn't a lot more rain falling. My house got flooded when I lived in Wiltshire back in sort of 2000, 3 times in 1 week in October, and then it flooded again in January. And the reason it flooded was because somebody changed the way that the water was coursing around the village that I lived in. And despite the fact that the farmer behind the fields had completely and utterly ploughed the field, you know, he wasn't taking it. He said, it's an act of God. He said, I'm not taking any blame for it. But he basically ruined the entire village because the water just ran off the field. And the same thing happens now. They've built on floodplains. They haven't got enough drainage. Every place I went to in Sussex last weekend where there was standing water, quite a lot of it, it was because somebody hadn't cleared the drains, because it always gathers around. And last weekend in Hastings, in south end of Sussex, they had another massive flood, and the local Labour MP, Helena Dollymore, actually wrote to Southern Water, who are supposed to be the people in charge of sorting the water out in Hastings.
Such a great track record, by the way.
I mean, it's just unbelievable. And said to them, look, this has happened for the second time this year. You said you were going to fix it, because if you saw the pictures, and I think we have got some pictures of the flood itself, you can see the water's actually coming up out of the ground. It's not falling from the sky. It's not flooding because there's too much rain. It's flooding because the pipes don't work properly, the drains don't work properly, and the local shopping centre, for the second time, as I say, this year, got flooded. She's basically saying to them, you people are completely useless. You said you were going to fix this. You haven't. If you're not pumping sewage into the sea, you're allowing this horrible water to flood into people's homes. People are not being compensated, and it's a nightmare. And there's a real problem in this country because we know exactly why it's happening. Environmental changes by local councils mean that they cannot clean things in the way that they used to.
But the county councils as well, not just the water companies, the ones that are tasked with actually cleaning those drains. There's been loads and loads of pictures on social media recently of drains literally blocked up with dirt, mud and rubbish.
Exactly.
No wonder things are flooding.
Yeah, because they're not clean, because they're not allowed to use cleaning agents any longer in the drains. So of course, you know, like anything else, if you've got blocked pipe in your
or it could just be that councils aren't doing their jobs properly.
In your kitchen sink, you put that stuff down it and it clears it out. They're not allowed to do that. So as a result, all the pipes are clogged. All of the kind of the places that normally the water would disappear and dissipate, it's not happening.
At the risk of sounding old, do you remember as we were growing up, there would be those big lorries that would come around with that big suction thing, go down the drain, clear it out.
They're not allowed to use those anymore.
Why?
Because it's environmentally unsound.
Well, because it might suck up a rat.
But not as much as a massive flood.
I mean, one of the reasons when my house got flooded, we had this culvert, this little stream that ran through the village, and it went under the church at one point in a culvert. And when the council came round and they said, well, we can see what the problem is here. We need to dredge the stream. He said, well, the trouble is we can't dredge the stream. And I said, why is that? He said, we've got water voles. And I'm like, are you joking? I said, everybody in this street has had their house. I mean, I had water up to there in my kitchen. You know, I said, because
of a couple of rodents.
I said, what if I come here and shoot all of the water bowls? Then there won't be any there. I said, then you could clean it. And he went, well, you could do that. He said, I wouldn't recommend it, though. But, you know, this is the ludicrous nature of where we are now, where we are now living.
But you know what? At lunchtime today, already it was flooded on the A1 as I drove home before I came here. And that's before the storm has truly hit.
And you can bet your bottom dollar that the standing water will be by a drain, which is not... Because people send me pictures all the time of drains that are literally full of plants and full of things that are just, there's nowhere for the water to go.
Tell you what, though, they're going to have a real battle cleaning up Hastings, aren't they? The Battle of Hastings.
Battle of Hastings.
Yeah, thanks for that. We've waited a long time for that.
Well, I just couldn't bring myself to talk about leaking.
Certainly, there are some people who say, actually, that it's better underwater, but that's another story. Dr. Renee, your second nomination,
Yeah, I'm
please.
sorry to go back to this topic, but I'm going to nominate the Welsh Government this week.
Don't apologise.
Right, because they have decided to change the definition of woman in law.
Right.
So they're going to redefine woman to include anybody who is thinking about transitioning,
in
the process of transitioning, or who has transitioned.
Okay.
And they're going to introduce...
How long do you have to think about it for?
Not,
like
as long as you
minutes?
want. As long as you want. It could be years. But also, they're also introducing women-only shortlists for the Senate.
OK.
And they're allowing...
So we can get on those, me and I.
Yes.
Me and Kev.
So if you're thinking about transitioning, you can then go on a woman-only shortlist and you will be counted as a woman. I've just had enough of women being erased from society because you might have a man who's mediocre, who feels that he's got a better chance of being elected if he's a woman or says he's thinking about being a woman. And here we have the Welsh Labour government facilitating it. And I mark my words, if we get a Labour government, this is what's going to happen. Because
they can't get themselves away from it. Amanda, this is mad, isn't it?
Absolute madness. I'm just staring at you thinking, what are they putting in the water in Wales?
Yeah.
There's just so many bad
Because this is
decisions.
how it creeps along, though, doesn't it? It starts off with, women who have transitioned, or men who have transitioned into women, and then it goes to men who might be transitioning, to men who might be thinking about transitioning, to men who might just be thinking about...
But then it's someone that wakes up on Monday and decides they're a woman today.
I mean, what's it all about?
But I feel worried that, the people like you who speak out about this are the ones that they've sort of put across that you're being, transphobic, whatever.
Transphobic.
And you have to, and you have to defend yourself. Where, you said that beautifully, that way of that you don't want to erase women, and I think that's what I find so shocking about it.
No, they're not actually women, they're people with cervixes. Let's get the terms right.
Sorry, Kev.
And the only thing I thought about that could save this is if you've got to hand deliver your application for your gender recognition certificate, you'll never get there because of the 20-mile-an-hour limits anyway.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's bad enough trying to get from one end of Wales to the other. I mean, you have to go through Snowdonia. Have you ever tried to drive from the south of Wales to the north of Wales?
Certainly not.
You're better off going back into England and going up that way, because there's no way you can get through all of the kind of the hills and the valleys.
And the trains
and all the rest
don't go
of it.
very quickly, do they?
But the serious point, though, is that we've spent, or politics have spent years and years and years trying to equalise gender, so particularly with regard to things like all-women shortlists. If anyone could be a man and anyone could be a woman, that is completely and utterly eroded to the point we won't know.
No.
You're never going to know in the data, how many women MPs there are, how many male councillors, how many female CEOs of FTSE 100 companies, because you could be whatever you want, whenever you want, on whatever day you want.
What should be? What is the point?
What should be enshrined in law is this.
Here's where check.
Is this. You want to be a trans woman, absolutely fine. You want to wear dresses and be called Jane, absolutely fine. Live your life however you want. But legally, when we're talking about what Wales is doing, I think we have to retain a distinction between trans women and women.
Right.
There's a difference.
And also people who just have thought about it.
Yeah, but there's a difference.
I don't think that's a special
but what Drakeford...
I thought about being a banana for
but what Drakeford is trying to do is just what you're saying, mate. He's trying to say that if I say, right, I'm identifying as a woman, then in Wales, I will be a woman. Well, I will never be a woman, even if I have surgery, I will be a trans woman, not a woman.
Right.
And that's where we have to draw the line.
Can you identify somebody driving at 20 miles an hour, do you think, if they stop you and say you've been speeding, Boyle?
No, I haven't.
No, I haven't been. There is a funny video, actually. We saw that the other day. But Kevin, it's your turn again.
Just stop oil.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thanks very much indeed. Amanda, over to you. Well done.
Yeah, I win. I mean, they're worthy candidates every week, of course.
Yes.
I was particularly interested, a couple of weeks ago, when they proved that actually they're not really Just Stop Oil, they're Just Stop Everything, when they cropped up trying to stop those migrants getting to the barge. What's that got to do with Just Stop Oil?
Also, that was the greatest driving through of Just Stop Oil protesters I've ever seen.
Yeah.
See, the guy from the Home Office just wasn't stopping. And then they tried to sort of get ahead of it and sit down. And they sat down in the road and they were all going, sit down, they won't be able to run over us. He started running over them. Yeah. And they're like, let's get out of here. And they started screaming.
Can you just stop this coach running us over, please?
It was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
The reason
65 people have been arrested this week alone in one 10-minute period.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is about the reason I've chosen Just Stop Oil this week is, talk about not reading the room. The world is on the edge of World War III.
Yes.
Catastrophe is happening in the Middle East. Right. The horror of what we've witnessed. The world is on the edge. And these people think we're going to just stop oil. I mean, talk about monolithic idiots who aren't reading the room. and one of their ringleaders is that girl called Phoebe or whatever.
Phoebe, somebody, yeah.
With the
she's always on
with the purple hair.
Yeah.
She said that she's got a mission. She's going to get arrested 7 times in the next 3 months.
Good.
So I think what we should do with her. No, it's not good. We should arrest her once and remand her in custody. Put her into prison.
For the rest of the time.
Put the rest of them into prison.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear any more. Oh, we can't put Just Stop Oil into prison because the prisons are full up. I don't care.
Right.
Put them behind bars and stop them.
Yes, absolutely. Or put them in an oil barrel or something.
You know, though, when these people don't have good intentions, you know, right?
Yeah.
Because Just Stop Oil have now also started protesting against Israel, haven't they?
They have, yeah.
And also started protesting against migrants at Bibi
They
Stockholm.
just stop
So they are just anarchists.
They are.
That's what they are.
Well,
All they care about is
and
protesting.
Phoebe, the woman in question, I think is the one who's educated at the £41,000 a year private school. Of course she is, right? We've got some footage, actually, I think, of the local arresting police this week. I mean, at least the police seem to be working a bit faster.
This is good.
This is actually, we're actually
as opposed
seeing,
to leaving them for 2 hours.
We're actually, exactly, right. And of course now they're moaning because the police and the judiciary are actually doing what I suggested they do ages ago, give them exclusion orders from London. Because of course none of them live in London, because they all live in the Shires.
They live in Tunbridge Wells.
They're now being treated like, recalcitrant football supporters who are banned from going to certain football games because of the offences they've committed. So I think that's a good thing. So if they're not allowed back into London, they'll have to start clogging up Tunbridge Wells or somewhere.
But these people don't care about the cause, Mike. I mean, that
Of course
Phoebe,
they don't.
she's clearly just got daddy issues, isn't
Yeah,
she?
yeah.
I mean, that's what this is about.
I mean, clearly.
She's rebelling against her parents. She doesn't care about the environment.
No, of course she doesn't. Here's another piece of footage of somebody from Just Stop Oil at the Natural History Museum, where they, for some bizarre reason, decided it'd be a great idea to throw orange paint over a fictitious skeleton of a dinosaur.
It's a titanosaur, the biggest dinosaur that ever lived. It's an
think
exhibition.
of the methane he
and the
was
thing is,
about.
I've never heard of a titanosaur.
It's what it's called.
Is it?
As in Titanic.
I'm not doubting you.
It's the biggest dinosaur ever.
But surely the Titanic
We
came
wouldn't
after
care.
the dinosaurs. They can't name a dinosaur after the
No, but
Titanic.
Titanic means huge.
Does it?
Yes. That's why the boat was called Titanic.
I see.
Titan.
I thought it meant
Anyway, that's not the point. The point
Which is
is
fascinating,
The
by the way.
point is, we digress.
Can somebody get his meds, please?
I've got some more facts about dinosaurs
Yeah.
if you'd like to. No, the point is, kids were loving this
Exactly.
exhibition.
Yeah.
They're queuing around the block to get into
They
it.
like it.
And, these people, they're spoiling the fun for kids. Just stop oil.
Yeah, I think that's a very good thing to end on. Coming up, we're going to be talking about Barnard Castle, not once, but twice, because it's been in the news for 2 different reasons. Coming up next, right here on Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. It's Friday night. It is TalkTV, of course, the one place to be for finding out exactly who has been the biggest plank. We're more than halfway through. We're very nearly at the last portion of the show. Amanda Devlin is up next. Amanda, what's your second nomination?
So you may have heard of Barnard Castle.
Yes.
Because you go there to check your eyesight.
Yes.
That's
I mean,
what
I
it's known
hadn't, to be
for.
fair, heard of Barnard Castle as a town, I don't think, in Britain until the Dominic Cummings affair.
Yeah,
I don't
and
think I'd ever heard
their
of it.
tourism since he took that little drive to test his eyesight during the height of the pandemic. Tourism has just soared there.
Yes.
Everyone wants to go and have a look for themselves.
Yes.
And there's a museum within it, Bowes Museum, and it has a Christmas market every year. But it's ditching the Christmas side of it, just calling it a winter market.
So it's only a Christmas market, but not calling it a Christmas market.
No, and
Excellent.
it's getting
I
rid
can see
of
why.
Santa Claus, because they don't want a Santa's grotto anymore, because they want it to be more inclusive to everyone.
So what's wrong with Santa?
So what have they got instead of Santa?
So they just have a normal...
Just a grotto?
No, they don't even... No, well, that could be maybe more fun.
Come to the grotto. Why?
With the random
There's
man.
nobody in it.
They might get more people turning up if you say that. You've said it in a bit of a naughty way. They'll get more people queuing up.
Well, you might do, but I'm not going into any grotto that I don't know what's in there.
With a stranger inside.
I mean, that sounds a bit iffy to me. And it's certainly not sending your kids in, are you? Going, sorry, what's in there?
Sounds like a great TV programme.
What exactly is a grotto?
A grotto
Santa works.
is a place
Is that where Santa hangs
Yeah, I mean, I don't think... I'm not even sure you can have a grotto unless there's a Santa
Unless you're
in it.
Santa. I mean, who else hangs out in a grotto?
So there's
Want to come around my grotto today?
Not really.
No one says that, do they?
Sounds like something you have after dinner at an Italian restaurant.
Yeah,
A glass of grotto. No, not really.
But on a serious note, this is outrageous once
ridiculous.
again. We are
What's wrong with
embarrassed
Christmas?
about our Christian heritage because we're worried it might upset other religions.
Right.
And yet we all celebrate Diwali and Eid and all of those.
Well, not really.
Well,
I don't.
No.
But we, as a
we don't
nation,
stop.
We don't celebrate anything.
But we don't object.
we don't object, and we wish people, happy Eid and happy Diwali. We don't cower away from it. It doesn't upset us.
Well, because we're supposed to be an inclusive nation, and we are. We've always been a
Unless it's
welcoming nation.
our culture.
Yes. But it's not
Richard
the...
Holden MP, he's spoken out about it because he just thinks that it's, gone completely woke and everyone's
a winter
gone
market
mad.
doesn't sound like anything, does it?
But also,
what's a winter market?
We know that
doesn't mean
it's
anything,
Christmas.
does it?
Who is going to be offended by that? I mean, I want to know who decides people are going to be offended about things.
But I don't think it's the people that they think are going to be offended. It's the people in control and power.
Yeah, it's always the pen
civil
pushers.
servants.
Yeah,
Yeah,
civil
the head
servants.
teachers and the vergers of churches or whatever that think they have to do the right thing so as not to offend a minority.
And this is a very special time of year, of course, where we're all on the edge of our seats waiting for the annual excitement of the John Lewis Christmas advert. I'm taking bets. Will they mention the word Christmas?
It's a winter advert.
Will they mention the word Christmas?
I don't think they've mentioned it for a while, have they?
No.
No, but Kate, I don't think they're going to do much. They haven't got much money, have they? They're having a
Well, they spent
time
about 20
financially.
million quid a year on that.
Well, they've lost.
I mean, who gives a damn?
They lost the CEO, haven't they?
Yeah,
They got a
she's
new
going.
one yet.
Yeah, she's resigned, but she's staying for another year and a half to see her
Great.
tenure out.
Happy days.
Yeah.
Where do you get those jobs?
To run it into the ground?
Yeah. It's not ruined enough.
Where do you get these jobs where you can resign, but you say, I'll be going in about a year and a half?
Yeah. Well, NatWest.
So a couple of million quid later.
NatWest, 5 million quid.
Yeah, NatWest, yeah.
Very bad at the job.
Yeah, I know.
Is anyone putting their Christmas tree up now it's November?
No, certainly not.
Bit
No,
early for
I
that
think
sort of behaviour.
they're weirdos.
Although I'm trying to get a parcel delivered to my house and it's not going well, so I might not get it in time for Christmas the way things are going.
Is it my present?
No, it's not. No, I've already got that hidden away in the secret room.
grotto.
It's in the grotto down the road.
My present for you is
don't
parked
worry.
outside.
Oh, thanks.
Russell, you're going back to the Middle East, aren't you?
Well, I kind of am, but via McDonald's.
Or
So
is it the East Midlands?
This is, and I don't know the name of the person, so I'm going to have to term this as McMouseman.
McMouseman, yeah.
McMouseman.
Sounds like a superhero.
And I
but
think
he's
this
not.
probably wins the prize for the weirdest plank that we've had in, 3 years? So this is an individual that took a box of painted, coloured mice, live, painted red, green, black and white. See where I'm going with this now.
Yeah.
As a protest against the Israel-Palestinian situation, particularly a protest against Israel. Hundreds and hundreds of mice in a box, which he walked into a branch of McDonald's, turned upside down and let go across the floor.
He should be easy enough to catch, this guy, shouldn't he? I mean, he's got a house full of mice.
He's on
and you go, there's comes another delivery of mice for this guy. That must be
And a lot of paint. A lot of paint turning.
And a lot of paint. Is it paint he's using or powder?
Well, it'll be dye.
He won't be using that stuff.
No,
that
there is a sort of thing you can dye animals with, but it's cruel. It's a really
it
bad
doesn't
thing
seem
to
good.
do.
Have we got another clip? I think we have, haven't we? Let's have another one. Now they're chanting. These mice are very clever. They can sing,
and
they can chant. Yeah.
Free Palestine.
This is unbelievable, isn't it? What's going on in this country?
And like the people that run McDonald's have any say whatsoever in
They're
that
all just
actually
standing
happening.
around going, what?
Yeah.
Why
Imagine if I'm in a restaurant, in one of the McDonald's restaurants, and that happens. You'll hear my screams.
Yeah. I know.
Away.
Which is the point.
You stand on chairs when you see
wonder who
mice,
comes
like
I
in
do,
cartoons.
yeah.
I mean,
who comes up and goes, this is a good idea, let's let some mice loose.
Yeah.
Painted
Imagine-
in the colours of Palestine.
So they're all-
in McDonald's. Oh yeah, great.
So they've got all these
It's like
balaclavas on though. They
Second
look
sex
like
is even more worrying, isn't it?
well, they look like terrorists. They're all balaclavas. They come running in. Oh
the
my
mice.
God, it's terrorists! Yeah, take that, mice.
Yeah, it's
It's
very
not
strange.
AK-47. It's a load
It's
of
very,
mice.
very
Yeah,
weird.
but I
indeed.
think it should stop because it's cruel.
It is cruel. I agree with you, but it should also stop because it's just stupid.
But it's a bit like when we used to have these conversations about Just Stop Oil, have already been mentioned today. They come up with more and more ludicrous ways of demonstrating, which
this
culminated
makes
for
the
Just Stop
biscuit,
Oil in those two idiots climbing up the Dartford crossing. which was really stupid. And you do worry that some of these idiots will come up with something even more idiotic and ridiculous.
Well, maybe
which
these
might be
organisations,
harmful.
Just Stop Oil, and these pro-Palestinians, maybe they have these kind of brainstorming sessions together, do they? Where they try and have a competition as to who could be the most ridiculous in terms of the next
they're all winning it. All
objection.
Unbelievable. Anyway, coming up, I'm going to be bringing you my second and final nomination. Then we're going to choose who is actually going to win Plank of the Week. Shall I give it a little go? Why not? Welcome back to Plank of the Week. I'm going to call for some kind of assistance very shortly for Kevin, because he clearly can't let go of his phone. He literally can't stop looking at it. I don't know what on earth is going on.
It's a picture of me.
But I've had 4 children and I know exactly what to do next. Coming up, I'm going to give you my final and possibly greatest ever nomination for Plank of the Week. And the reason I say it's the greatest ever is because I've been given permission to use the words that this man actually has used in the past in his own way, speaking at the COVID inquiry. And you all heard it. I don't know whether you missed it or was it bleeped out. It's going to be bleeped out here because it has to be bleeped out. But Dominic Cummings, the chief aide to Prime Minister Boris Johnson, was appearing before the COVID inquiry this week, and he gave away through one of his WhatsApp messages what he thought of the cabinet. And it will come as quite a shock to you to know that not only did he call them pigs, not only did he refer to them as morons, but he also said that collectively they were a complete and utter bunch of Now, if you don't believe me, have a look at this.
You called ministers useless morons in emails and WhatsApps to your professional colleagues.
No, I think I was reflecting a widespread view amongst competent people at the centre of power at the time about the calibre of a lot of senior people who are dealing with this crisis extremely badly.
Yeah, it's good to know that the chief advisors of the government think so well of his colleagues.
But say what you like about Dominic Cummings, he's right.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, we've all used those words when we've talked about the government over the past few years, and there's no question that clearly when the COVID crisis was at its height, that him sort of barricading himself into his office and rolling around sending messages to people, calling them 4-letter words and morons and all the rest of it. Yes, you can't keep saying it. That would be pushing the envelope too far. We're not allowed to say it anymore. But I tell you what, it is a remarkable place that we find ourselves in, where the man that thinks that he put Boris Johnson into place as the Prime Minister, the man who sort of groomed him, if you like, as the leader of the Tory party, the Brexit king of everything, and is now sitting there saying basically he couldn't do the job, he should never have been given the job, you know, without any shred of sort of sorrow that he was part of the whole ridiculous machine.
He was responsible,
that he could, you know, don't forget, this is the guy, and we talked about Barnard Castle, this is the guy, as you said, who went to Barnard Castle, ran off out of Downing Street, clutching all the things that he could gather, ran off, got his wife and kid in the car, drove up to the northeast of England, and then claimed he was doing it to have a test of his eyesight.
And he was running away from COVID as well. He thought that if he ran fast, he could escape the virus. It doesn't really go like that, John.
He keeps doing that, though, he said it again this time, saying that he's just not a very smart man. So that's OK. You know, he's not very smart. He employs other people to be smart, and they've let him down. It's not really his
I think
fault,
he is very smart, though. He's just dysfunctional and odd.
He is odd. I mean,
he's
this is a
also
guy.
a woman scorned, isn't he?
He is.
A woman
he really
scorned,
is, yeah. And he's never going to forgive Boris
Yeah.
Johnson for replacing him in his affections with his new wife, Carrie. You know, that's really what he can't get over. Because at one point we heard, didn't we, in earlier kind of testimony at this COVID inquiry, that it was actually Carrie who was running the country. So it wasn't Boris at all. So maybe he's actually sort of subterfuging the whole issue, and he's really having to go at Carrie and not Boris.
Imagine you're one of the relatives of people who died in care homes where they were not protected by a ring of steel or shipped out of hospital too soon. Listening to this rubbish go on, you must be absolutely apoplectic with rage.
Exactly. Because what on earth were they thinking? And why on earth were people so willing? And I said this to somebody this week on one of the shows. Why were people so willing to go along with it? That was the thing that struck me as incredibly bizarre, that so many people were like, oh yeah, if we just stand behind each other in a queue to get into the supermarket, we'll be fine.
But not least,
if we don't get any closer than a
mainstream media.
The biggest discussion in number 10 Downing Street before the lockdowns were the cabinet ever said, people simply will not do this.
But
then they were stunned at the compliance of the people that we all just did. So
well,
that was an extraordinary
I mean,
moment.
I stopped going to supermarkets because I couldn't stand this ludicrous kind of sheep-like behaviour where people were just standing there with their bag, snaking around the corner. You know, sometimes the queues were a couple of hundred people deep.
But you know what, Mike? It goes on. I watched a woman on a tube yesterday take off her makeup, put on her full makeup, do her hair, put everything away, and then put a mask on.
Really?
Which line? Which tube line?
Northern.
Typical.
Yeah, must have been coming from Hampstead.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a bit funny.
Always the Northern line. That's my line.
It is the thing. But, I mean, and you see people more and more wearing masks again, and it's almost like they want to go back to that kind of controlled way of living where they can point at you and go, you're not doing it. You're not doing it. You're a bad person.
No, you're an idiot.
One of the biggest contributors to all that, though, of course, was the mainstream media, particularly the left-leaning media, right? So the BBC, the Guardian, Sky, and so on, I mean, that were regurgitating and exaggerating all this rubbish that was coming out of so-called experts' mouths and frightening the life out of us.
And also all of those ridiculous 5 o'clock press conferences that we all watched because there was nothing else to do.
With questions from people
all
like
the questions
that
were, why are you not
long?
doing it quicker? Why are you not doing it harder? Why are you not looking down for longer?
Which is what the COVID inquiry is. The COVID inquiry's remit does not cover whether or not we should have had lockdowns. It only covers whether or not we locked down early enough or long enough.
But
I mean,
that we
lockdowns are the
know,
things
and
we should be questioning,
know
and yet the COVID inquiry bloody well isn't.
Right.
You know what the best use of those 5 o'clock press conferences would have been for Boris?
What?
After he got sick, he should have stood up there every night and said, listen, guys, the reason I got so sick was because I'm overweight. Let's lose weight together.
Yes.
I'm going to weigh in publicly today. We'll do it every day. We'll talk about it. You can watch me.
Rubbish. Don't tell me that I have to be thin or fat. It's nothing to do with Boris Johnson. Nothing to do with the government. Obesity's my choice.
Yeah, but you're not obese, though, so it's easy for you to say that. I mean, on the other hand,
Mike?
of course, I am. And I enjoy it. I say to people,
well, that's your right.
Loads
That's
of
your
money
right.
to get to look like this. You know, I spent
I know.
Absolute
And it's your
fortune.
right to do so. It's nothing to do with the
But it would have been
goddamn
better
government.
time than what they did.
Nothing to do with the government.
It would have been better
Well, it
time.
would have
You're not
been-
gonna
Don't be
bully
so
me.
illiberal.
Would you stop arguing with people? For God's sake, get him on another show, for heaven's sake. He's obviously fallen into the wrong studio.
He's probably due on one in a few minutes
Get that
anyway.
medicine ready for him as well. Get him injected with something as he's walking out. Now, come on, we're going to have to look at this in some detail because we've got an awful lot of really good...
And you're not allowed to win again.
And also, well, I don't like winning. It's not really because of me wanting to win. But we had the Metropolitan Police and Sir Mark Rowley, I think, last week, as winners. So we can't be doing them. The Welsh Government's a good one. I quite like Keir Starmer, just because I quite like calling him a plank. But I think it might have to be Sadiq Khan, because Sadiq Khan, everybody loves to hate him, particularly in this particular time when people haven't got the money, when people have been begging him not to charge the money, and he says it's not about money. 26 million quid in the first month. I think we know what it's all about.
The man is a pirate and a plank.
The man is definitely a plank. So, no, I didn't say Imran Khan, did I? Sadiq Khan, you have won Plank of the Week again. Coming up soon is going to be Plank of the Year. Thank you very much indeed to everybody for talking over each other consistently. Of course, Renee Hoenderkamp, Kevin O'Sullivan, Amanda Devlin, Russell Quirk. I'll be back at 11:30 with The World According to Mike Graham after the pubs have shut. And of course, coming next, it's Friday night with Nadine.